Right guys, today we're going to talk about Christian samurai. My name's Anthony Cummins, I'm a historical researcher and author. Please do like and subscribe and all that. Please pass this to anyone you think would be interested in it. That would really help me. And today we're going to be promoting how to be a modern samurai. If you're interested in samurai, get yourself a copy of this. And always, it helps support me and keeps me alive with food and things like that. Okay, so I got asked about Christian samurai. Now, a lot of people, obviously those people who know about Japanese history will know that the Christians were there, but most people on the planet don't think of Japanese as Christians. Now, the first Christmas ever was held in the celebration was held in the 1500s in Japan, believe it or not. So right in the Sengoku period, somebody was celebrating Christmas. Right in Japan. And actually, what a lot of people don't realise is that Christianity was flourishing and becoming really popular in 1500s Japan, Tokugawa Japan, to the point where they had to actually ban it later on, just after the Sengoku period, or just around the end of towards, they started banning it in different ways, and getting to the point where they actually started massacring the Christians, and a lot of Christian martyrs, sort of saint figures, are actually from Japan because they kept their faith and were murdered, killed, burned, tortured, raped. Some horrific stuff there. But today I was learning about, during my work, I obviously do lots of research and books, and I came across an interesting samurai called Konishi, and he's given a Christian name of Augustine, basically. Augustine Konishi. And he is a full-on Sengoku period military warrior samurai who was in the Korean campaign. He was at Sekigahara and on the losing side, and was a bit of a rascal, to be fair. So let's talk about him for a minute. So here he is. This is a picture of him, and basically this guy was at odds with a samurai called Kato Kiyomasa. Okay, Kato Kiyomasa was literally like the demon samurai. He was a mint samurai. He stormed up and threw everywhere, murdered everybody. He was pretty cool. And these two warriors were sent across to Korea. Now, when they went to Korea, if you don't know, the Japanese samurai invaded Korea when Hideyoshi took control of Japan. He was like, what do I do with all these samurai? And he was like, I know, let's become the king of the world. So he literally went on a sort of Hitler-esque, let's just take over everywhere. And some people have actually said what his invasion of Korea was like blitzkrieg. It was like, just go. And they did at the beginning. They absolutely peppered the Koreans. And there's no doubt about that. A lot of people say the Korean invasion of Japan was a little bit of a, I don't know, they suffered too many losses. They lost in the end. But they peppered the Koreans. It was only when the Chinese got involved and Admiral Yi of the Korean Navy cut them off that actually they started suffering. But on the whole, they just massacred them en masse. So basically, en masse actually. So what is it about this guy? So the Japanese went to Korea and went into 3 different avenues. Now, this is normally called Sangun, the 3 ways, but one historian says there's only 3 practical routes. So you'd have to say, oh, is it the normal Sangun, 3 armies, or is it just because there are 3 practical routes? But anyway, on one side you've got Kato Kiyomasa, and on the other side you've got this samurai called Augustine, right, who's like got a Christian name. Full Japanese, just given a Christian name, but it's called Konishi. And he basically, them two are steaming up for Seoul, the capital, technically the capital of Korea, and they're literally racing against each other. The first one to get there is Augustine, and he's like, right, and they were told to wait, and he's like, bollocks, go lads, and they just start storming up, murdering everyone. They're like, get out of my way, I'm a samurai, smashing things down, burning places up, cutting people's heads off and all that. And Kato Kiyomasa arrives because the winds have stopped him, and he's like, bastard Christian, and he just goes up the other side like that. Eventually they meet in a tent on a command point, meet. Sun Tzu says this, meet on certain intersecting roads. This is classic Japanese samurai tactics. Divide into 3, meet at certain points, river crossing, straight out of Sun Tzu, it's all there. And basically they get to this command tent, and Kato Kiyomasa is like, you're a knob, you're a dick, and he's like, shut up, you turnip. And they're all like saying, well, who's going to go first and everything. So he says, well, why don't you go and Kato Kiyomasa realizes that actually there's a force waiting for him across this river. So he's like, oh, go on, you try that, thinking, oh, he's going to fall crockery. But actually, it doesn't. He batters them. So Augustine batters the Koreans, takes 3,000 heads. There's that many heads that they can't do the proper head inspection because they've just got to move on. Because Kato Kiyomasa is now like, let's race to the capital, or, you know, basically the major city they're after. So they're racing up again, and then they're sort of meeting again and saying, well, who's going to be first into the city or across the rivers and blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit mixed here, but you're getting the idea. And basically, Augustine says, why don't we do it... Oh, I'm just giving, by the way, the Christianized version of the name. It is, I got a Japanese version. But basically, the Japanese samurai called Augustine, he's given a Christian name. And he says, let's do lots for it. And he's like, you're like a merchant doing lots. And like, the next thing, he's trying to draw his sword in the command tent. People are gripping him and like, I'll fucking have you, mate. Bang, they knock it. Honestly, like, this is not me just exactly, literally going at each other. And people are gripping him back, going like, stop it. And he's trying to draw his sword. I'll have you. And these two are on the same side. And then they like go up to the city. This Christian samurai gets him first. And then he says to, he's like Kato Kiyomasa's troops are outside, and he just locks the gate on them. Goes, embarrasses them and not allowed in. So these two are fuming with each other. Kato Kiyomasa breaks off and goes to a different direction. He's had enough. He goes off that way, and he does a stellar job bringing the Koreans under heel. Then eventually some more politics happens. The Chinese get involved, and they pulled backwards. And Kato Kiyomasa is like, are you taking the piss? I am doing a grand job here, but they all get pulled back. Kato Kiyomasa stays around this sort of area, but Augustine actually has to get back and get involved with Hideyoshi. He goes back to Japan and is chatting to him, and he actually signs a letter. His job is to deal with the envoys of the Chinese who are saying, stop it, stop invading Korea or we'll come and massacre you. And Hideyoshi's like, bring it on, tell them to sod off. So Augustine actually writes a fake letter from Hideyoshi. So like, okay, Hideyoshi. He writes it and says, we accept that you are the greater kingdom and actually we subservient to you. And he gives that, and then they get a letter back and it says, to the king of Japan from the emperor of the world. And Augustine, the samurai, is like, yeah, it's all great. Eventually, but what happens here is Augustine actually says to the envoy, or it's presumed, he says to the Chinese envoy, the enemy, that, oh, by the way, back in Korea, Kato Kiyomasa is around here, cut him off, probably trying to have him killed. Hideyoshi finds out that he's actually lied to the Chinese and literally nearly has him executed, and he's only just saved from being executed. Hideyoshi's in a rage, ripping all his garments off, like, because he's meant to be like these gifts from the envoys. He's like, you can sod off, we'll back. And he sends people back to Korea, because of course by this time, it's been a couple of years, people are back now. Sends them back to Korea and says, just massacre everyone, I've had enough, because the Christian samurai lied. You're just like... So basically, guys, and then you get obvious Sekigahara happens, and Augustine, the samurai Augustine, is actually on the defeated side, and because suicide is a sin, he cannot commit harakiri, and he actually is beheaded as the enemy. So, you know, that was the end of that Christian samurai. Now, there are many more Christian samurai to discuss, but the point I'm trying to get to here, that's one story about one. There are plenty of them. Basically, Jesuits, who are Catholics, went across and they basically started to go to Japan, and at first they tried to change the mind of the poor people, but it was like you change one poor person's mind, change the next, and you don't really get very far. So they decided to change the minds of the warlords, and when you change the mind of a warlord, hundreds if not thousands change to be in vogue with him, and then when he goes back away from his, they all change away. And so basically the Jesuits came over, brought guns, brought that sort of stuff, traded with guns, opened churches, got warlords to convert, and then basically masses converted, and you end up in a place called Shimabara, which is a castle town, basically. And what had happened is they were overtaxed, like really, really overtaxed, to the point where it was just absolute anarchy and chaos, and they were in uprising. But they also happened to be a big Christian section left of samurai, commoners, everything. And the Battle of Shimabara, or the Siege of Shimabara, is a rebellion, and the rest of the samurai of Japan just on it, and they massacred everybody. It's like pretty much a genocide of that. They just went and killed everyone, killed the last remnants of the Christians and any last rebellion. It was like a twofold thing. Is one, the government knew full well that they were probably in their rights to rebel because they'd been hammered with taxes, but they were like, we can't show that it's okay to rebel, and Christianity's outlawed, so double peril, and just murdered them all. And they say, it's said that the casualties of that are equal to the casualties of the initial blast of the nuclear bombs at like Nagasaki and things like that, or Hiroshima. So not the overall effect over months, but basically the same sort of casualty rates as when the bomb drops on Hiroshima versus that slaughter. And it's that massive, it's in the tens of thousands, and they're comparable. It's that much of a sort of genocide of people on a medieval population, so versus a modern population. So that's a big percentage of the area are killed. And there you go, guys. So that was a little bit of information on Christian samurai. So when you're thinking about the samurai, just imagine that there are Christians there for about 80 years. I'm going to say 100 years. There are actually Christians that go on for 300 years, but they're hidden. But probably, to round up, for 100 years, from the 1540s, 1550s, the Christians start arriving, and then they're fully gone by the 1630s. And then they're just petering out, and that's it. So for about 100 years, you get Christians in Japan, and that includes things like William Adams and Richard Cox and all the other travellers who were there. Literally, when you're thinking about Sengoku Japan, you've got to put the Chinese people in who are visiting there and who are living there. Monks are living there. You've got to put the English people in who are living there. You've got to put the Dutch, the Jesuits, the Portuguese. They're all there. Loads of them are actually getting involved. And of course, the black samurai from Africa, he's only one though, whereas the English lads and the sort of Western lads were quite a few actually. They arrived in full ships and literally were like hanging around the town with prostitutes, intermarrying and all that sort of stuff. So and interestingly, in the Korean campaign, some of the people stayed behind. So there are Japanese descendants in Korea of those samurai and ashigaru who were there. Okay, guys, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please get yourself a copy of How to Be a Modern Samurai, 10 Steps to Finding Your Power and Achieving Success by Moi. It does help and all that. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you get a bit more idea of what's going on in the land of Japan in the 1500s.